Hi, my dear Osa family. So today we are going to be looking at Mercury Cazimi that is happening on the 24th of April. So basically we have got the rebirth of Mercury. Like I did a video on Venus, rebirth as well a few days ago. So we are going to be following the very same pattern as well when it comes to Mercury rebirth as well. Now, a couple of technical things. First of all, it's happening on the 24th of March, and it's going to be taking place on 4 degree of Aries. So if you have got any planet, especially on 4 degree of the cardinal signs, Aries, Capricorn, Libra, or Cancer, then actually this is a super important period for you. A Mercury new cycle lasts for about 116 days. So the stuff that I'm going to talk to you about is not necessarily just kind of like for a couple of days. Okay. But one of the most intense period of that is going to be the very first 11 days. But I'm going to break this down for you. Before we start, I want to announce something. I think it's exciting for plenty of you. My question to you is, are you afraid of Saturn? Because I decided to put together a very long course on Saturn where I'm going to be breaking it down. This is going to be the ultimate course you ever need on Saturn. It's going to be 20 weeks though. So it's a long course. But the reason why I decided to do that because I want to be extremely thorough and I want to kind of like diminish the whole idea about how cruel Saturn is. Yes, Saturn is the planet of consequences. So when our actions are not aligned with Saturn placement in our chart, unfortunately, it is going to be brutal. But Saturn is also connected to luck. Because if you think about what luck means, luck is basically being at the right place at the right time. And also, often our luck comes from the consequences of our actions. Yes, Jupiter is also the planet of luck, but that's more to do with a one-hit wonder type of luck. So, like, we win the lottery ticket, it brings us the opportunities, but without reaching out to those opportunities, we might not be able to grab them. So I want to reframe the whole thing around Saturn. So what are we going to be covering in this course? Well, first of all, we are going to be looking at the meanings of Saturn. So that's going to be approximately about 4 classes. It might sound a lot, but basically, we're going to be looking at Saturn as the planet of karma and karmic debts. We're going to be looking at Saturn as the archetype of a teacher. Saturn's in connections to the 12th house because it has got planetary joy there. So, what type of meanings can we derive from the 12th house? Saturn as the planet of family legacy. You might not have known that, but Saturn is our family legacy planet. We're also going to be looking at Saturn in relationship and Saturn as the planet of profession as well. Even we're going to be focusing on Saturn in a young person's chart as well as in an elderly person's chart. And also we're going to be looking at Saturn as the planet of psychology or what it means in a psychological process. And then the second part of the course is going to be focusing on Saturn in signs and houses, as well as in aspects to your personal planets. And lastly, we are going to be having a closure with Saturn returns and how we can work with Saturn return charts. So this is a very intense course. Now, I understand that not everyone will need the entire course. So I decided that you can cherry pick between certain type of lectures. And if you wish, you can just buy individual lectures out of it. You're just going to have to let me know which one you are interested in. And then once we kind of got to that stage, then I can, of course, send over the recording to you. So check it out on my website. You can find the full syllabus. But the aim of the course is not to be afraid of Saturn. We should get familiarized with the meanings of Saturn. So I will walk you through the meaning of Saturn in your birth chart in a positive as well as in a negative way. And often when we feel stuck in life, focusing just on Saturn, which might be a representation of our karmic journey, would be extremely beneficial. Now, let's get back to our agenda today. Mercury Cazimi. Now, I'm fed up with Mercury don't sign contract and all these type of things as well, because Mercury is not necessarily about that. Actually, if you start looking at Mercury retrogrades, then one thing you will notice is that every single time when Mercury goes retrograde somewhere, and that was 9 degrees this time around, 11 months before, that's when the planet went direct, around 9 degrees. So it's connecting a loop. So whatever went down 11 months before, we have got certain type of consequences that are kind of like coming back to us. And maybe we're gonna have to this time around take actions, or we took some actions 11 months before, and then now we're gonna have to revisit those. But today we are going to talk about the Mercury cosimis. And because Mercury goes retrograde 3 times a year, it actually makes conjunction within a certain amount of time to the Sun at least 6 times. So what you will see is when you start looking at these certain type of degrees, then actually a Star of David formation is going to get created in the chart. For example, in 2022, we had air signs happened. So basically, we've got two conjunctions happening all the time. So we've got once when Mercury is retrograde and once when it's direct. And when I connect those with the retrograde Mercury degrees, then basically you're going to get a Star of David. Now, a Star of David is a sacred symbol used by the Jews, and it's basically based on the horoscope of King David, who was said to have been born with two fortunate grand trines, which interlocked to create a six-pointed star. And even he wanted to intimidate his enemies and imply that he was unbeatable. So he engraved this symbol on his armor. Now, Mercury goes retrograde, mentioned earlier, 3 or 4 times a year for about 3 weeks. So if you just think about that 360-degree that the zodiacal circle includes, you divide that by 3 anyway, you're going to get 120, which is a trine aspect. So it also kind of shows that Mercury is not about, oh, let's not sign contracts and so forth. Now, there are 6 phases of Mercury. We've got an inferior conjunction happening when actually the Mercury becomes a morning star, and it lasts until it goes stationary direct. So that's approximately about an 11-day long period. And then once it goes stationary direct, it's going to reach the greatest elongation as a morning star. So therefore, it increases brightness. It lasts for about 10 days. And then we have got the greatest elongation, which means pretty much that it's kind of like very far away from the sun. Mercury never goes more than 29 degrees away from the sun. So, and then it's going to be making another superior conjunction. This is the phase 3, where the morning set and disappears into the light of the sun, and that's about a 37-day long period. And then we're going to have the superior conjunction, and that phase lasts until the greatest elongation as an evening star. Basically, it's again a 37-day period. And then from the greatest elongation, it's going to go stationary direct again. So it's going to be the brightest in the evening sky, slows down to station retrograde. It's again lasting to about 10 days. And then the last stage is when stationary retrograde happens, and then it's again making an inferior conjunction. So basically, it's a setting point, and it's again lasting for about 11 days. So that's how the 116 days of Mercury cycle actually build up. Each of these are having a different task. So I want to talk about that too. The first phase is when we have got, remember, the first phase was about an inferior conjunction to stationary direct. So that's exactly the stage where we are. That's what we call as the first stage of Mercury. We are meant to be looking at issues 11 months before, and we need to be preparing ourselves for a closure. The second phase, where we need to be looking at a new road, new ways of thinking, becoming a lot wiser, and be meant to be developing something. In the third phase, we have got new ideas, new ways of moving forward. That's pretty much the Gemini qualities of Mercury. In the fourth phase, we're going to have to reflect, harvest, sharing, and articulate the process. In the fifth phase, we're going to have to be thinking more introspective, philosophical, reviewing things and how we can improve our ideas. That's more to do with the Virgo qualities of Mercury. And the sixth phase is basically something to do with evaluation of what have happened. And basically, it's the end of a completion cycle and a completion of a project. Now, so I wish I had just, the capacity to kind of break this down for you right now with the 6 phases of Mercury, how it's going to be working out for you in the next 4 months. But this time around, I just pretty much want to be focusing on what this Kazimi is actually talking to us about. By the way, again, if you want to be looking at whether you are a morning star or a evening star, you need to be locating your sun. If Mercury is clockwise, then basically you are more of a Promethean Mercury. And if it's counterclockwise from the sun, then you are more of an Epiphanian Mercury. And it's going to be actually talking to you about slightly bit differently because one of them is going to be more Gemini qualities, while the other one is going to be more about the Virgo qualities. So this is a webinar topic that I did recently where I compared Mercury and Jupiter, and then I kind of like explained it there. But if you have got Mercury ahead of the sun, then it's more hot and moist. So therefore you're more challenging, more independent, more eager, more impulsive. You've got a lot of visions going on. You are a lot more risky. You have got more of a futuristic mindset. You more of a kind of like a cheater as well, or mischievous, more curious, more talkative. That's the masculine expression of Mercury. And then if you have got this Mercury behind the sun, so you've got the Epiphanian Mercury that it's more cold and dry qualities. So practical, analytical, discriminative, objective, historically minded, a lot more wisdom with that, and so on. So for example, I've got a Mercury, which is actually a Promethean Mercury. By the way, Prometheus was the one who stole the fire for the humankind because he saw the future. So Mercury is more future forward. And therefore, it indicates that Mercury has already risen. So I've got the sun in the sign of Aquarius and Mercury is in the sign of Capricorn. So if I put the sun onto the rising sign, Mercury would be already above the horizon. So it would be visible. That's basically what it means. And but let's have a look at what is going on with this Mercury. By the way, I highly recommend looking at Mercury and Jupiter similarities and that webinar because Mercury is a really underrated planet. Often we just think it's about communication and how we study, how we speak, and so forth. But Mercury is more than that. Mercury is the representation in ancient astrology connected to dreams. It was a psychopomp. It had a lot to do with the dead souls. It had also a lot to do with fertility as well. It was the god of fertility back in the days. And of course, nowadays, what we hear about Mercury is that Mercury is the trickster, and then you cannot have children with Mercury, and so forth. Yeah, there is some truth to it, that Mercury is not the most beneficial when it comes to fertility, but it was the god of fertility. So it's worth exploring. Anyway, so we've got this Kazimi happening in the sign of Aries. So one of the danger of that, because Aries is very impulsive, Aries is impatient. So we need to be monitoring our kind of like relationships because it's going to be very easy to kind of like get into fights. get into certain type of arguments. And Mercury is actually telling us that we need to be able to slow down the mind a little bit. Of Aries, Mercury is very much about kind of like a direct communication, a quick thinking, an assertive way of thinking as well. But Mercury being retrograde, it means that we're going to have to reevaluate the way we communicate. And maybe communicating with force or communicating with threat is not always going to work out. However, I also would like to mention that we do have got a Mercury Cosimi, and Mercury Cosimi is a divine insight. We have got this sparkle of kind of like we have got this sparkle of like intuitive forces going on. And the reason is because Cosimi basically what it means is that Mercury is at the heart of the sun, which is about 17 minutes, not degrees, minutes. So it's super close to the sun. And the sun is the king of the chart. So basically Mercury is sitting on the lap of the king. And then it gets all this type of beautiful information from the king, the inside. The problem sometimes here is that Aries is impatient, maybe doesn't listen to the story entirely. And now what's going to happen is that you're going to miss certain type of information that actually you need to be able to concentrate on. So are you one of those? Because then unfortunately, this is a little bit of a challenge. Aries is a fiery sign, right? And it's the start. This is the beginning. This is a new journey. So we can be very excited about a new journey that is about to kind of like coming up your way. And in the political world, I would say that it's highly possible, unfortunately, that there is going to be quite feisty conversations are going down. And because it's on 4 degree, it's really close to the world degree as well, which is the 0 degree. So that's also very interesting that Mercury is about to shift back into the sign of Pisces. And then once it does it, the next day Neptune shifts into the sign of Aries. So it's worth looking at what is going on already in the world. Okay. Now, what I would say with this Mercury Cosimi is that on one hand, just having to sometimes put our anger aside. Sometimes we're going to have to take the emotions out of a certain type of a situation and then trying to think more logically. That's going to be really important. This could actually talk to us about that something breaks out. I mean, Mercury in Aries is very much about demonstrations. Now we can see what is happening in Turkey. So this is kind of like a sign of what to expect in the next 4 months, pretty much, but especially in the next 11 days. I'm expecting something like that to happen. I would also say that with the Kazemi, it's usually meant to be a kind of like a blessing, but it only becomes a blessing once we are able to kind of like keep our ears wide open. So we're gonna have to listen. We're gonna have to reflect, especially with Mercury retrograde. We're gonna have to go inwards. Otherwise, we are not going to be hearing half of the important information that are presented to us. And this is why it's quite a conflictual type of energy as well. Um, so when Mercury goes retrograde, it's gonna be basically it is becoming an like an it comes from an evening star positions. So and that is more to do with the night expression of Mercury. So the night expression would be the Virgo type of qualities, which I gave you the explanation earlier already, right? That we're going to have to be able to discern this information. We're going to have to dissect it. We're going to have to analyze it. We're going to have to be able to kind of like look at the details. And that's where Aries could be lacking often. Of course, what happened before that the Mercury was under the sunbeam or it was under combustion. So it means that it was burning it up. So often that's indication of, you know what, I'm getting tired. A lot of us probably got tired due to the fact that Mercury was the ruler of Virgo during the eclipse, right? And a Virgo is about medical matters. So probably a lot of us were struggling with certain type of lacking energies. And this Kazimi can give the energy back to you. But again, it is telling you that you don't need to be jumping up and down immediately. Build up the strength kind of like continuously. And that would be also extremely important. Sometimes, Kazimi, to be frank, because we are talking about a rebirth process, it could be destructive as well. It could be chaotic. It could be very difficult. So even though ancient astrology says that, oh, it's a blessing, and sometimes it's just a blessing in disguise, though. Because especially in the sign of Aries, it can come with a lot of frustration, or there is a change of circumstances happening, or because Mercury is going into a different direction. And usually Kazimi, yes, indicates that things are going to work out for the better. Later on, you're going to see that this is the way how it should have happened at the beginning. But when it happens, when that particular circumstance or event takes place, unfortunately, it does show that, it is frustrating. It is making me angry. And so misplaced anger could be quite a big topic with this. And also, it's in a very volatile sign, so it's very easy to hurt others. It can feel like that someone is taking the whip out of your hand. It can feel like that because Mercury is going under this certain type of a transformation process through being burned, so being tired, being kind of like agitated. And then all of a sudden, I've got this clarity coming to me and then I can finally start fresh. So I hope this makes sense, what I'm kind of like trying to describe here. Imagine that Aries is a young archetype. It's a daytime expression of a planet. But Mercury is kind of like a night expression right now. So we also have got a bit of a clash going on there too. Okay, so obviously imagine that you want your child to go to bed at 8 or 9 p.m. because that's their bedtime. And then I don't want to, and then I'm going to throw a tantrum. So that's also a Mercury, an Aries type of energy now with this Kazimi though. But in the morning, kind of like, I'm going to understand, you know what, mom, it was so great that I went to bed early because now I feel extremely fresh. Mercury is a little bit more tactful this time around, more practical. It's kind of like trying to fix something. So maybe I'm trying to fix up the army. I'm trying to fix up certain type of connections. Remember that we are about to have the very last eclipse happening also in the sign of Aries and Libra for at least 9 years. Okay. So I would also say that the reason why we need to go through this purification process, this rebirth process, because at the end of it, we're gonna have to be coming out of it stronger. And that's the Aries there. We're gonna become more vocal. We're gonna become more assertive. We're gonna be able to defend the self. We're gonna be able to stand up for the self. Now, the other bit I wanted to mention here is that the dispositor, though, Mars is on 21 degree of Cancer, and it is in square to Chiron. So there is the question of pride here. There is the question of confidence being demolished. There is a trigger point here, a past trauma or a past kind of like feeling or wound that gets opened up. So, for example, in the political world, imagine that I thought I kind of buried this situation already. We have already discussed this multiple times. So why are you bringing this up? So we might start talking about the past. We might start talking about, I don't know, what went down, for example, let's say 4 months ago. Why are we still talking about that? And then Mercury will be shifting back into the sign of Pisces, making a conjunction to Neptune, So there are certain type of peace talks going down here. Venus is also making a conjunction to Neptune. There are certain type of peace talks going on here. There is this element of forgiveness, probably certain type of arrangements, but maybe there is kind of like a background motive of it. There is, yes, fluidity going on. It looks like we are moving on, but it looks like it's not necessarily forever though. Okay. And Aries has got a tendency to move on really quickly from something. So, that's okay. But also it can indicate a relationship is about to die. And then a new relationship is about to be born or even reborn. So a new contractual agreement could be coming up with this. And maybe sometimes, when the sun is a part of it, maybe we need a mitigator here. Maybe, two employees are arguing, and then we've got the boss archetype who is coming into the picture, and then kind of like, bringing two people together. The sun is kind of like the purpose giver. It gives the new life. I mean, just think about what happens to you in the spring. You are not as miserable anymore, right? Or even the summer. I mean, the sun can drain you out when it's too hot, but when it's lovely, you are more lively and you want to be outside and then you want to walk your doggies or you want to be on the beach and so forth. So that's exactly how Mercury feels like. It feels so passionate, so ignited about something. Um, so we might be seeing some very much like connected to empowering speeches, like motivational speeches. Mercury Cosimi represents clarity, and the mind is illuminated. So somehow we've got this kind of like a mental breakthrough that is happening with it. Even Mercury here has got a lot of inventive qualities as well. So we come up with, uh, what exactly to say, what the right word is. We might not be able to pick the right word, and it might prove to be wrong later on, especially when Mercury runs into Neptune, where we've got a bit of a confusion going on. That has been said, no, that has not been said. So that could be a bit of a story here. But in that moment, it really looks like that, you know what, I did exactly what I had to do. So we can be even proud with this. And surely this quality could talk to us about having to look at our mental health as well. We would need to, and I think it's kind of important because Mercury was the ruler of Virgo, and Virgo could represent worries, being worried, and being worried about who we are. So, of course, with the Mars and Chiron square, that's also echoed, being worried about who we are, being worried about displaying that word of strength that we've got within us. And we can be hesitating quite a lot whether I'm allowed to say something or not. So, probably this is telling us to check out our wellness level as well. So I think that's what I wanted to share briefly about this. Now, if you are wondering about how it might play out on a personal level, then you might want to be considering signing up to my weekly forecast groups. You can do that on my website, and you can even do that on YouTube channel as well if you join my membership program. It comes with certain type of discounts from readings and so on, and then you get four monthly videos, breakdowns for 12 signs, and sometimes some special content as well. So yeah, if you're curious about that, go ahead and check it out. So guys, this would be my interpretation on the upcoming. Oh, sorry, actually, before we do that, I wanted to tell you that you might want to go back to about 28th of February, because that's when Mercury went pre-retrograde. So a retrograde shadow started there. And Mercury entered the sign of Aries on the 3rd of March. So something would have kind of started boiling up there. And then, of course, Mercury stationed retrograde on 14th of March on 9 degree. And then, of course, now we've got the Mercury cosimi on the 24th of March on 4 degree. So in the last, basically, almost 1 month, you might want to be looking at what went down in your life, because maybe that's what you're going to have to be kind of like dealing with right now. And the consequences are somehow uh, coming back, and you're going to have to do a lot of re-evaluation on that. I think that's what pretty much. Remember that fire is always about instigation, trailblazing, courage, ambition, temperament. Uh, but this Aries is more of a Virgo quality. So that is knocking it down. It's controlling signs. So I'm controlling something that I'm about to initiate. I'm controlling that fighting spirit. So it really looks like that we are swallowing a lot of anger here. That would be the whole idea around it. And I think this is really echoed by the Mars and Chiron square as well, where it feels like that I am not allowed to express my anger and frustration. Let's say, for example, the family doesn't allow me. So there needs to be a strategy of unleashing that inner beast. We're going to have to do gradually the action that we are about to take. We cannot just kind of like pour that onto others, because they're going to get really, really kind of like angry. So good luck in the next 4 months ahead, and see you soon. Bye bye.